I was at my desk with the morning mail in 3 stacks, one for business, one for nuisances, and one for the kind of citizen who thinks Nero Wolfe was put on earth to settle family quarrels, when the front bell rang at 10:23. Fritz was in the kitchen, Wolfe was upstairs with the orchids, and for once I had no company except the ticking clock and my own bad judgment, so I went to answer it. The woman on the stoop was dressed for a funeral or a trial, and maybe she hadn't decided which. She wore a black hat without nonsense, black gloves, and a face that might have been handsome if it had ever taken a holiday. She said, "I wish to see Nero Wolfe at once." "My name is Clara Voss." I told her plenty of people wished it, and some even lived through the disappointment. She said, "A dead man has been buried 3 times in 4 days, and each time the coffin has been opened again." That got her into the office before I had finished deciding whether she was daft, theatrical, or merely rich. Wolfe came down at 11, crossed the office as if the world had made a personal affront by continuing, and lowered himself into his chair. He looked at Miss Voss, then at me, which meant I was to stop enjoying myself and start earning money for the establishment. She gave it to us neatly. Her brother, Edwin Voss, had died on Sunday night. He had been a dealer in rare books, modestly prosperous, punctilious, and disliked by a number of people who had found him honest at inconvenient moments. He had been laid out on Tuesday. On Wednesday morning, the undertaker called to report that a cousin had appeared with a court order and demanded the coffin be opened. It was opened. The Thursday morning it happened again, this time at the insistence of Edwin's business partner, who claimed a document had been buried by mistake. Thursday evening the coffin was opened a 3rd time after an anonymous telephone call to the cemetery office warned that the wrong body had been interred. "That," she said, "is intolerable." "It is also irregular," Wolfe muttered. She ignored that. Nothing was stolen from the body, nothing visible at least, but my brother was carrying something when he died, and I think one of those people believes it was placed in the coffin. Wolfe's eyes lifted half an inch. That was his equivalent of a trumpet flourish. "What was he carrying?" "A memorandum book," she said. "Small, leather, ugly, and more dangerous than any pistol." I asked why. She turned to me with a glance that had starch in it. "Because Edwin wrote down what people owed him, money, favors, humiliations, indiscretions. He had a passion for exact record-keeping. He trusted paper more than blood." Wolfe shut his eyes. "That can mean ecstasy, despair, or digestion. With him, you wait." Finally he asked who had sought the openings. Clara Voss named the cousin, Leonard Dykes, the partner, Julian Haft, and Edwin's former fiancée, Iris Vale. Then she added a 4th name. "My husband, Paul." I had seen family grief before, but this smelled more like bookkeeping. I took a breath and kept it. Wolfe opened his eyes. "Archie, get Miss Voss's check. This house has now been disturbed." I got the check from Miss Voss without comment, which meant she had already decided we were necessary and resented it. The amount was adequate, not generous, and Wolfe nodded once, as a signal that the gears had engaged and would now turn at their own deliberate speed. "Sit," he told her. "You will answer questions. Mr. Goodwin will record them." I took out my notebook and tried not to look as interested as I felt. A coffin opened 3 times in 4 days had a certain charm, like a locked room with bad manners. "Your brother died how?" Wolfe asked. "Of a seizure, according to the doctor. He collapsed in his study." "Who was present?" "No one. He lived alone." "Who discovered the body?" "I did. I'd gone to see him regarding an arrangement." Wolfe's eyes flicked. "Which you will describe." She hesitated, and for the first time the starch in her voice softened. "My husband's affairs are precarious. Edwin had agreed to assist us, but only under conditions I found distasteful. I went to argue. Instead, I found him on the floor." "Was the memorandum book on his person then?" "No, I searched. It was not in the room either." That landed with a small thud in my mind. If the book hadn't been there when she found him, then either it had been taken before death or by someone who arrived between death and her entrance. I glanced at Wolfe, but he was looking at the ceiling, which meant he had already run ahead of me and was waiting for me to catch up or fall down. "You informed the authorities," he said. "Yes. The police came. They were uninterested in anything but the cause of death." "As they often are," Wolfe murmured. "Who arranged the burial?" "I did. There was no reason to delay." "No reason except the absence of a dangerous object," I said. She gave me that look again. "I did not then know it was missing." "Indeed," Wolfe said. "Now, to this cousin, Leonard Dykes, his interest. A gambler with pretensions. Edwin had financed him once and later refused to do so again. Leonard claimed Edwin held a note of indebtedness that could ruin him. And Mr. Julian Haft? Partner in the book business. Efficient, discreet, and ambitious. He and Edwin disagreed over certain acquisitions. Julian believed Edwin had concealed profits. Iris Vale? Clara Voss's lips tightened. She was engaged to Edwin 2 years ago. It ended badly. She accused him of cataloguing her faults. "That sounds like Edwin," I said. Wolfe ignored me. "And your husband?" She met his gaze squarely. "Paul believes Edwin intended to expose him. There are matters, financial primarily." "Primarily," I repeated, because it was begging for it. Wolfe waved a finger, not at me but at the air. "So you will provide addresses for all 4. Mr. Goodwin will make inquiries. You will remain available. Do not interfere." "I have no intention of interfering," she said, which is what they all say just before they do. When she left, the office felt fuller instead of emptier, as if she had deposited something besides a check. Wolfe rang for beer and closed his eyes again. "Well," I said. "Well," he echoed. "A missing object of value, not monetary but coercive. 4 interested parties, each with motive to retrieve it, and each with sufficient urgency to violate the decorum of burial. The book was not on the body when Miss Voss found it, yet 3 separate efforts were made to open the coffin. Therefore, at least 2 of those efforts were based on misinformation." "Or one was," I said, "and the other 2 were piggybacking." "Possible," he conceded, "but inelegant. I prefer that each action have its own cause." "Then someone told them the book was buried," I said, "or made them think it." "Precisely. Archie, begin with Mr. Haft. Business partners are rarely sentimental and often efficient. Learn what he believes was in that coffin and why." I went out with a hat and a sense that the day had improved. Julian Haft's office was on West 37th, above a shop that sold antique maps to people who liked their lives old. Haft himself was a narrow man with a careful mustache and eyes that measured like a scale. "I've already spoken to the police," he said when I gave him my name. "I have nothing to add." "Then subtract," I said. "Why did you insist on opening your partner's coffin?" His mouth twitched. "Because Edwin had a habit of concealing documents in unlikely places. I believed he had placed a ledger on his person." "Which ledger?" "One that would demonstrate that certain profits had been diverted." "Diverted by whom?" He spread his hands. That was the question. "And the answer?" "Was not in the coffin," he said dryly. "Who told you it might be?" "No one. It was an inference." I left him with his inference and went to Leonard Dykes, who was easier to find because men like him prefer visibility when they are solvent. He was at a club on Madison, looking like a man who had once been handsome and had since spent the capital. "Cousin Edwin," he said when I mentioned the name, and he made it sound like a diagnosis. "What about him?" "You had him dug up," I said. "Opened," he corrected. "Not dug up. There are forms." "Why?" "Because he had my note," he said. "A note that could be misinterpreted." "Misinterpreted as what?" "As evidence. he said, and smiled without humor. I was told he had put it in his pocket. I wanted it back. Who told you? A friend, he said. Anonymous. Convenient, I said. Necessary, he replied. I left him and found Iris Vale in a studio that smelled of turpentine and regret. She was painting something that might have been a landscape if you squinted and forgave it. I did not open his coffin, she said before I had finished introducing myself. I demanded it be opened. There is a distinction. Of course, I said. Why? Because Edwin collected people the way he collected books. He annotated them, and I believed he had written something about me and concealed it where no one would think to look. In his coffin. In his sense of humor, she said. He would have enjoyed it. Who suggested it? She hesitated. A telephone call. A woman. She said, "He has taken you with him." That's poetic, I said. It's obscene, she said, and turned back to her painting. By the time I got back to the brownstone, the pattern was beginning to show its bones. 3 of them had acted on information, each tailored to their private fear. A note, a ledger, a humiliation. Someone had known exactly what to whisper to each ear. Wolfe listened without interruption, which is his way of saying he is pleased. When I finished, he opened his eyes and said, "Yes." "Which means what?" I asked. "It means," he said, "that the book is not in the coffin and never was. It also means that someone wished to ensure that each of those persons revealed the nature of his or her fear. We have been given their motives, neatly labeled. By whom? He picked up the telephone. "We shall invite them to dinner," he said, "and observe who prefers to eat and who prefers to starve." Wolfe did not elaborate on his menu, which was his habit when he intended to use food as a lever rather than a pleasure. He instructed Fritz in a low voice, naming dishes with the precision of a man composing a brief, then turned to me. "Telephone them," he said. "Mr. Haft, Mr. Dykes, Miss Vale, and Mr. Paul Voss. Invite them to dine at 8. Inform them that refusal will be interpreted as a declaration of guilt." "That's delicate," I said. "It is effective," he replied. I made the calls. Haft accepted with reluctance, polished to a shine. Dykes accepted with curiosity and a gambler's itch. Iris Vale accepted after a pause that suggested she was deciding whether to be insulted or intrigued. Paul Voss accepted immediately, which I didn't like. When I hung up, Wolfe had settled back, eyes half closed. "Now," he said, "we consider the anonymous communications." 3 of them, I said. Dykes gets told his note is in the coffin. Haft infers a ledger. Iris gets a poetic nudge, and the cemetery gets a call about the wrong body. 4, Wolfe corrected. "Do not neglect the last. It is the most revealing." "Why?" "Because it is the least tailored. It suggests not a private fear, but a general disruption. Someone wished the coffin to be opened repeatedly, by different hands, for different reasons." "Why not just open it themselves?" I asked. "Because," Wolfe said, that would not expose anything. It would merely retrieve. Our unknown prefers revelation." I leaned back. So the point wasn't the book. It was watching them scramble for it. "Partly," he said, "but also to establish a pattern of intrusion. The sanctity of the coffin has been violated 3 times. The 4th violation may be of a different nature." That gave me a small chill I didn't admit to. "You think the next move isn't about the cemetery?" "I think," Wolfe said, "that our adversary has demonstrated a taste for controlled disturbance. It would be uncharacteristic to confine it to one locale." As if on cue, the front bell rang. I went out with a feeling I had been invited to a performance and was now being shown to my seat. The man on the stoop was compact, well-dressed, and carried his tension like a briefcase he didn't intend to set down. He introduced himself as Paul Voss. "I'm early," he said. I wish to speak privately." "About dinner?" I asked. "About my wife," he said. I brought him to the office. Wolfe opened one eye, saw who it was, and closed it again, which was as good as a welcome. "My wife is mistaken," Paul Voss said without preamble. "There is no memorandum book. Edwin kept records, yes, but nothing that could harm me." "That is a generous assertion," I said. He ignored me. "I came because I do not wish to be embarrassed this evening." "Then you should have chosen a different life," I told him. Wolfe spoke. "Mr. Voss, you have been invited. You will attend. You will listen. If you have nothing to fear, you will eat. If you have something to fear, you will still eat, but less comfortably." That is all." Paul Voss looked at him, then at me, then back again. "You are making a spectacle." "I'm making dinner," Wolfe said. "The spectacle is optional." Voss left with a stiffness that suggested he would not enjoy the soup. I returned to my desk and found that the morning mail had lost its charm. The day had shifted from curiosity to something tighter. At 4, Saul Panzer came in without ringing, which meant Wolfe had summoned him earlier without informing me. Saul took a chair and a sandwich from his pocket and said, "What's the tune?" Wolfe gave him the essentials in fewer words than I would have used to order a beer. Saul listened, nodded once, and said, "You want background on all 4. "I want proximity," Wolfe said. "Where they have been, whom they have seen, and whether any of them have communicated with the others in the past 48 hours. Saul chewed. "You think one of them is orchestrating the rest?" "I think," Wolfe said, "that someone with knowledge of each has played them like a quartet. It may be one of them. It may not." Saul swallowed. "Time frame?" "Now," Wolfe said. Saul left as quietly as he had come. I watched him go and said, "If it's not one of the 4, who else knows enough to tailor those calls?" "Someone who has had access to Edwin Voss's records," Wolfe said, "or to his confidences." "Clara Voss," I said. Wolfe did not move. "Possibly, but she came to us. That is either candor or strategy." "Or both," I said. He inclined his head a fraction. "You are improving." At 6, Fritz announced that dinner would be ready at 8 precisely, and that any delay would be regarded as a personal affront. Wolfe accepted this as natural law. I checked the dining room, then the office, then the hall, as if I expected the coffin to walk in on its own and ask for a chair. At 7:45, the first of them arrived. Haft, punctual and dry, took a seat and examined the room as if it were an inventory. Dykes came 5 minutes later, smelling faintly of optimism and cologne. Iris Vale arrived at 2 minutes to 8, bringing with her a tension that made the air feel painted. Paul Voss was last, at 8 exactly, which told me he had debated being earlier and decided against it. Wolfe entered at 8:02, which was his way of reminding the world that time was his servant, not his master. And he took his place and looked at them one by one, not as a host, but as a judge deciding whether the proceedings were worth his attention. "We will dine," he said. "Afterward, we will speak." Fritz served. Conversation was minimal and brittle, like glassware handled by people who had never trusted their hands. I watched them as I ate, noting who avoided whose eye, who drank too quickly, who tasted nothing. Haft ate with method, Dykes with appetite. Iris Vale barely touched her plate. Paul Voss forced each bite as if it were an argument. Wolfe ate well. Of course he did. When the plates were cleared and coffee placed, he dabbed his lips, settled back, and folded his hands. "Now," he said, "we will consider why a coffin has refused to remain closed." No one spoke. That was good. Wolfe preferred silence the way other men prefer applause. It gave him space to arrange his thoughts and, more importantly, to let other people trip over theirs. I leaned against the wall near the globe and watched the faces. Haft had gone still in the way of a man who believes motion is admission. Dykes lounged, but his eyes flicked from one to another as if counting cards. Iris Vale sat straight, hands folded too tightly, as though she were holding something that might escape. Paul Voss had chosen a chair slightly apart, which was either strategy or instinct, and he held his coffee cup without drinking. Wolfe began without raising his voice. Each of you has, within the past 4 days, participated in or demanded the opening of the coffin of Edwin Voss. Each of you has done so for a reason particular to you. Mr. Dykes sought a note. Mr. Haft sought a ledger. Her Miss Vale sought a written humiliation. Mr. Voss, he paused, not because he needed to, but because it was useful, sought to ensure that nothing existed which might inconvenience him. Paul Voss's jaw tightened. I did nothing of the kind. You came here early to assert precisely that, I said helpfully. Wolfe lifted a finger, not at me, but at the air between us. The important point is not that you acted, but that you were prompted. 3 of you received information. 1 of you received a warning. The information was tailored. The warning was general. This indicates design. Dykes snorted softly. Or coincidence. Wolfe turned his head an inch. Sir, coincidence is a lazy man's explanation for a pattern he has not the wit to perceive. You may keep it if you wish. I do not require it. Dykes subsided, which I marked down as a small victory for civilization. Wolfe continued. The object which you believed to be in the coffin was not there. It was not there when Miss Voss discovered her brother's body, and it was not placed there subsequently. Therefore, the repeated openings did not and could not achieve their stated purpose. They served another. Haft spoke for the first time. And what purpose is that? To expose you, Wolfe said. The word hung in the room like a smell. Each of you has now declared, by your actions, the nature of your fear. Mr. Dykes fears a note of debt. Mr. Haft fears a record of diverted profits. Miss Vale fears a written catalogue of her private faults. Mr. Voss fears exposure of financial irregularities. Wolfe's gaze moved, measured and precise. You have, in effect, provided a list of the contents of the missing memorandum. I saw it land. Not with a crash, but with that quiet shift you get when a lock turns somewhere you didn't know existed. Iris Vale spoke first, her voice low. If the book is not in the coffin, where is it? Wolfe closed his eyes. That is the question which should have been asked before you disturbed the dead. It is the question we will now answer. Then answer it, Dykes said with a shade too much eagerness. Patience, Wolfe murmured. First, we must consider who possessed the knowledge necessary to prompt you so effectively. He opened his eyes and looked not at them but at me. Archie, I obliged. Whoever made the calls knew exactly what to whisper to each of you, not general threats, specific ones. That means access to Edwin Voss's records or his confidences. Maybe both. And it also means a taste for timing, because each of you moved fast. Haft's mustache twitched. You imply that one of us, I imply nothing, Wolfe said. I observe. There are, broadly, 2 possibilities. One of you orchestrated the others, or someone outside this room with access to your private vulnerabilities did so. Paul Voss set his cup down. My wife, he said. It was too quick, and it had the wrong weight. I watched Wolfe, but he did not move. An interesting suggestion, Wolfe said. Mrs. Voss did, after all, come to us. She informed us of the memorandum. She named you all. She has motive, if one can call the desire to control a situation a motive. But we must be cautious. An accusation is not a conclusion. Dykes laughed, a short bark. She'd do it. Cool as ice, that one. Iris Vale turned on him. Nuss, you don't know her. I know the type, he said. You know nothing, she snapped. Enough, Wolfe said. And they stopped, not because of the word, but because of the tone. We will not descend into recrimination. We will proceed. He shifted slightly in his chair, which for him is equivalent to pacing. There is a detail which has been neglected. The fourth communication, the anonymous call to the cemetery, stating that the wrong body had been interred. This was not tailored to a private fear. It was designed to produce official action. It ensured that the coffin would be opened even if the private prompts failed. Haft frowned. A safeguard. Precisely, Wolfe said, which suggests that the originator of these communications was not entirely confident in the compliance of any single recipient. Therefore, the plan required redundancy. I felt the pieces edging closer, and the redundancy worked. The coffin got opened 3 times. 4, if we include the attempt by Mr. Dykes, Wolfe said. Yes. Now we ask, what was gained by those openings? Nothing, Dykes said. We've established that. Nothing was retrieved, Wolfe corrected, but something was gained. Information. Each of you, by your action, confirmed the existence and the nature of what you feared. That information is now in the possession of the originator. Silence again, but a different kind. This one had teeth. Haft leaned forward. You are suggesting blackmail. I am suggesting leverage, Wolfe said. Blackmail is a vulgar application of leverage. Our unknown may be vulgar. We shall see. Iris Vale's hands had tightened further. I wondered if her fingers would leave marks. If someone has that book, they do not, Wolfe said calmly. She stared. You said it was missing. I said it was not in the coffin, he corrected. Missing is a relative term. It depends on one's point of view. Dykes swore under his breath. Then where is it? Wolfe's eyes moved, not to any of them, but to the door. The bell rang. It was not loud, but in that room it sounded like a statement. I went to answer it with the distinct impression that whatever was on the other side would not be a surprise, only a confirmation. Clara Voss stood there, still in black, still composed, but with something altered, an edge, as if the starch had been replaced by wire. I hope I'm not interrupting, she said. On the contrary, I told her. You're right on cue. She stepped inside and I closed the door behind her, thinking that if coffins could refuse to stay closed, so could rooms, and that we were about to find out which this one was. Clara Voss entered the office as if she had been expected, which, in a sense, she had. The others turned toward her, each with a different expression. Dykes with interest sharpened by suspicion, Haft with irritation at an unplanned variable, Iris Vale with something closer to dread, and Paul Voss with a stiffness that suggested calculation failing to keep up. Wolfe did not rise. He inclined his head the fraction required by courtesy, and no more. Mrs. Voss, you join us at an opportune moment. I gathered as much, she said, taking a chair without waiting to be invited. Her eyes moved once around the room, measuring, then settled on Wolfe. Have you found it? Found what? Wolfe asked. The memorandum, she said. Ah. Wolfe's voice held a trace of satisfaction. You assume it is to be found. Her chin lifted slightly. Is it not? It is, he said, but not in the manner you expect. Paul Voss shifted. Clara, what is this? You had no business coming here. I have every business, she said, not looking at him. My brother is dead and his affairs are... She paused, then corrected herself. Unfinished. Dykes let out a soft chuckle. That's one way to put it. Haft spoke, clipped and precise. Mrs. Voss, if you have something to say it. We are already engaged in speculation. Wolfe raised a hand. There will be no speculation. There will be order. He looked at Clara Voss. You asked if we have found the memorandum. We have not found it. We have, however, determined its function in recent events. That is more valuable. Her eyes narrowed. Function? Yes, Wolfe said. It has been used, or rather its absence has been used, to provoke action. That action has revealed the private concerns of each person present." She was silent a moment. Then, quietly, "Yes." It was soft, but it carried. I felt the room shift again, like a floor settling under new weight. Paul Voss turned sharply. "What do you mean, yes?" She ignored him. "Go on, Mr. Wolfe." Wolfe steepled his fingers. "You came to us with a story of disturbance. A coffin opened repeatedly. You provided names. You provided motives. You did not provide the memorandum. You stated that it was missing when you discovered your brother's body. That is correct." "Yes," she said. "You also stated that you searched for it," Wolfe continued, "and did not find it." "Yes. And yet," Wolfe said, his voice as calm as a closed book, "you knew precisely what was in it." A small silence followed. Not empty, dense. Clara Voss met his gaze without flinching. "I had read parts of it before." "Of course," Wolfe said. "Your brother trusted paper more than blood, but he was not immune to showing off his collection." Dykes shifted in his chair. "What's the point of this?" "The point," Wolfe said, "is that Mrs. Voss possessed sufficient knowledge to tailor communications to each of you." Paul Voss let out a short, incredulous laugh. "That's absurd." "Is it?" Wolfe asked. "Consider, Mrs. Voss knows that Mr. Dykes fears a note. She knows that Mr. Haft suspects diverted profits. She knows that Miss Vale resents and fears written judgment. She knows her husband's situation. She also knows that the absence of the memorandum creates urgency. She then ensures that each of you believes the object of your fear has been placed in the coffin." Haft leaned forward. "You are accusing her of orchestrating this." "I am describing a pattern," Wolfe said. Iris Vale's voice was tight, and the call to the cemetery. "A necessary redundancy," Wolfe replied. "If the private prompts failed, the public authority would ensure the coffin was opened. The result would be the same." Dykes swore softly. "So we've all been dancing to her tune." Paul Voss stood abruptly. "Clara, this is insane. Tell them." She turned to him slowly. "Sit down, Paul." There was something in her voice that made him hesitate. Then, reluctantly, he sat. She looked back at Wolfe. "You are very thorough." "I'm paid to be," he said. "And you believe I did this to expose them?" she asked. "I believe you did this to assess them," Wolfe said. "Exposure is a byproduct. Assessment is the aim." Her lips curved, not quite a smile. "And what, Mr. Wolfe, do you think I've assessed?" "That each of these persons is vulnerable," Wolfe said. "That each will act to protect himself or herself. That each can be influenced by the suggestion of disclosure." "And what would I do with such knowledge?" she asked. "Use it," Wolfe said simply. Silence again. This time it was not tense. It was waiting. I spoke into it. "There's still one problem. If you had the book, you wouldn't need to stir them up. You'd already have the leverage." Clara Voss's eyes flicked to me. "Correct." "So you don't have it," I said. "No," she said. Paul Voss seized on that. "There. You see? This is nonsense." Wolfe did not look at him. "Mrs. Voss does not have the memorandum, but she knows where it is." That landed harder than anything so far. Haft's voice was sharp. "Where?" Clara Voss did not answer immediately. She looked at Wolfe, and for the first time there was something like respect in her expression. "You are very close," she said. "I'm precise," Wolfe corrected. "You discovered your brother's body. You searched. You did not find the memorandum. You concluded that someone had taken it. You also concluded that the person who took it would not yet understand its full value. Therefore, you created a situation in which that person would be forced to reveal himself or herself by attempting to use or secure that value." Dykes leaned forward. "Meaning what?" "Meaning," Wolfe said, that the originator of the anonymous communications is not Mrs. Voss, who it is the person who has the memorandum. I felt it click, not loudly, but cleanly. Iris Vale whispered, "One of us." "Possibly," Wolfe said, "or someone connected to one of you. But the knowledge required to tailor the communications must have come from the memorandum itself." Haft's eyes narrowed. "You're saying that whoever has it read it and used it?" "Yes," Wolfe said. Paul Voss's voice was strained. "Then why all this? Why not simply—" "Because," Wolfe said, "the holder of the memorandum did not yet know how best to apply it. By provoking each of you, he or she could observe your reactions, confirm the contents, and refine the leverage." Clara Voss exhaled slowly. "Exactly." Dykes looked from one to the other. "So which of us is it?" Wolfe shifted slightly in his chair. "We are approaching that." The bell rang again, and this time it was sharper, or perhaps I was. I went to the door with the sense that the pattern had reached its next point, and that we were about to see whether it would hold or break. On the stoop stood Saul Panzer. He did not waste time. "I've got something," he said. I let him in, and as we went back to the office, I had the distinct impression that the coffin, wherever it was, had just been opened again. Only this time, something inside it had decided to step out. Saul came in with his coat still on and his eyes doing that quiet inventory they always did when a room held more than furniture. He nodded once to Wolfe, took in the assembled company without comment, and said, "You wanted proximity. I've got it." "Proceed," Wolfe said. Saul didn't sit. Mr. Haft spent Tuesday afternoon at his office, alone except for a clerk who left at 4. No visitors. Wednesday morning he received a telephone call at 9:12. After that, he went directly to the undertaker. Haft's mustache twitched again, but he said nothing. "Mr. Dykes," Saul continued, "was at the club most of Tuesday, left briefly around 6 and returned before 8. Wednesday morning he got a call at 10:03. He made 2 other calls, then went to the cemetery." Dykes gave a small shrug. "So?" Saul didn't look at him. "Miss Vale was in her studio Tuesday evening. A call came in at 7:40. Neighbor heard it ring twice before she answered. Thursday morning she contacted the cemetery." Iris Vale's hands tightened again, but her face stayed composed. Saul shifted his weight. "Mr. Paul Voss was at his office Tuesday until late. Wednesday morning, no calls until after 11. He went to the cemetery Thursday evening after receiving a call at 5:26. Paul Voss frowned. "I already said that." Saul nodded once. "You did. What you didn't say is that before that call, you made one at 5:17, to a number registered to a public booth on 10th Avenue. That landed. Paul Voss's mouth opened, then closed. "That proves nothing." "On its own," Saul agreed. "But it's a piece." Wolfe inclined his head. "Continue." Saul reached into his pocket, took out a folded slip, and glanced at it. "The undertaker received 2 calls on Thursday. One at 8:45 in the morning, one at 5:58 in the evening. Both anonymous. Both from different public booths. The morning call is the one that led to Mr. Haft's visit, and the evening call led to the cemetery check for the wrong body." Haft leaned forward. "I did not receive my information from the undertaker." "Correct," Saul said. "You received yours directly. Different call, different source." Wolfe's eyes were half closed now, but I knew that meant the machinery was running at full speed. "Mr. Panzer," he said, "the public booths, locations." Saul glanced at the paper. "Morning call. Booth on 32nd and Lexington. Evening call, 10th Avenue near 44th. I felt something stir. Not a conclusion yet, but the beginning of one. Wolfe spoke softly. "And Mr. Voss's call at 5:17? "Same 10th Avenue booth," Saul said. The room went still. Paul Voss shifted in his chair. Coincidence? No, Wolfe said. It wasn't loud, but it carried more weight than anything shouted. Paul Voss's face tightened. You can't. I can, Wolfe said, and I will. You placed a call from that booth shortly before the anonymous call to the cemetery. That establishes opportunity. It does not yet establish authorship, but it is suggestive. Clara Voss turned slowly toward her husband. Paul, he avoided her eyes. I told you it's nothing. Dykes let out a low whistle. Looks like something. Haft said sharply, this is still circumstantial. Indeed, Wolfe said, which is why we will not rely on it alone. He opened his eyes fully now and looked at Paul Voss. You denied the existence of the memorandum. You came early to discourage inquiry. You have made unexplained calls from the same location as one of the anonymous communications. So you have the strongest motive to suppress or exploit the contents of that memorandum. Paul Voss leaned forward, his voice tight. Or to prevent exactly this kind of nonsense. Wolfe ignored the interruption. However, there is a difficulty. The anonymous communications to Mr. Dykes, Mr. Haft, and Miss Vale were tailored. That requires knowledge of the memorandum's contents. You denied such knowledge. I do deny it, Paul Voss snapped. Then either you lie, Wolfe said calmly, or you are not the originator of those communications. A small silence followed that. I said, which leaves someone else with the book. Precisely, Wolfe said. Iris Vale spoke, her voice low. Then why involve him at all? She nodded toward Paul Voss. Because, Wolfe said, he is useful. Paul Voss turned sharply. Useful for what? For misdirection, Wolfe said, and for confirmation. Clara Voss's eyes had not left her husband. Paul, she said very quietly, did you find it? He hesitated. That was enough. I did not, he said, but the timing was wrong. Wolfe leaned back. You searched your brother-in-law's study after his death. Paul Voss's head jerked. No. You did, Wolfe said. You made a call from your office late Tuesday evening to a locksmith. He attended the premises. You were there. Saul nodded once. Confirmed. Paul Voss's composure cracked just a hair. I had a right. You had an interest, Wolfe corrected. You searched. You did not find the memorandum. Therefore, you concluded that someone else had taken it. And you then attempted to discover who by placing a call to the cemetery to provoke further disturbance. Dykes laughed softly. So he's been playing detective. Poorly, Wolfe said. Paul Voss's voice rose. And you? Sitting there, making guesses. Wolfe did not react. Your error, sir, was in assuming that the person who took the memorandum would act directly. Instead, that person acted indirectly, using knowledge from the memorandum to provoke each of you. Haft's eyes sharpened. Which brings us back to the same question. Yes, Wolfe said. Which of you had both access to the memorandum and the inclination to use it in this manner? I looked at them again, but differently now. Not just as suspects, but as pieces in a design that had already been partially revealed. Saul shifted slightly. There's one more thing. Wolfe inclined his head. Miss Vale, Saul said, you had a visitor Tuesday afternoon. Before the call, a man matching Mr. Voss's description. Iris Vale stiffened. Yes, he came to see me. Paul Voss turned. What? She ignored him. He asked about Edwin, about his habits, about where he kept things. Paul Voss's face flushed. I was making inquiries. You were fishing, she said coldly. Wolfe's gaze moved between them. Interesting. Mr. Voss searches the study. Fails. He then seeks additional information. Meanwhile, Miss Vale receives a call later that evening tailored to her fear. Therefore, the originator had access to the memorandum before that call. I felt it settle into place, not fully, but enough to see the outline. Which means, I said slowly, the book was taken before Clara found the body. Yes, Wolfe said. Clara Voss closed her eyes briefly. Then I missed it. No, Wolfe said. You were not meant to find it. Haft leaned forward again. Then who was present before she arrived? Wolfe looked at him. That, Mr. Haft, is the question which resolves all others. No one spoke. Wolfe folded his hands again. Miss Voss discovered the body, but there was a period between Edwin Voss's death and that discovery. During that period, someone entered, took the memorandum, and left without being observed. Dykes said, someone with access. Yes, Wolfe said. Access, knowledge, and motive. His eyes moved one by one across the room and stopped. I didn't need him to say it yet. I could see where he was looking. And I knew that whatever had been hidden in that coffin had nothing on what was about to come out of this room. Wolfe let the silence hold just long enough to tighten, then released it with a small movement of his hand, as if he were placing a final piece where it belonged. Miss Vale, he said. Every head turned. Iris Vale did not move at first. Then, slowly, she lifted her chin. That is absurd, she said. It is precise, Wolfe replied. Dykes shifted forward, interest brightening. Haft went very still. Paul Voss stared at her as though seeing a new arrangement of something he thought he knew. Clara Voss did not speak, but her eyes sharpened. Iris Vale's voice steadied. I was not there. I told you. I found out later. You told us, Wolfe said, that you had not opened the coffin, only demanded it. That is correct. But we are not now discussing the coffin. We are discussing the interval between Edwin Voss's death and its discovery. She held his gaze. And you think I was present then? I know that you were, Wolfe said. How? She demanded. Wolfe did not answer immediately. He turned his head slightly toward Saul. The visitor on Tuesday afternoon. Saul nodded. Neighbor across the hall saw her leave around 5:15. Said she was agitated. Iris Vale's eyes flickered, just once. You visited Edwin Voss that afternoon, Wolfe said. Not in the evening, as you implied, but earlier. You had reason. Your prior relationship. Unfinished matters. You were admitted. I have told you, she began. You have told us what was convenient, Wolfe said, not raising his voice. You went to see him. You argued. He collapsed. Whether from seizure or stress is irrelevant. He was dead, or as good as dead. You then had an opportunity. She shook her head, but there was less certainty in it. No. Yes, Wolfe said, because you knew of the memorandum. You had been subject to it. You knew what it contained. You also knew its value. You searched. You found it. Her hands, still clasped, tightened further. I wondered if her knuckles would split. And then? Dykes said, leaning forward. What then? Wolfe answered him without looking away from Iris Vale. Then she left. She did not call the police. She did not inform Miss Voss. She allowed the body to be discovered later by another, so that her presence would not be immediately connected. That's... she started. Careful, Wolfe said softly. You have already contradicted yourself once. Do not compound it. She stopped. Wolfe continued. Once in possession of the memorandum, you faced a difficulty. You did not yet know how to use it. You knew its contents, but not the reactions they would provoke. You required confirmation. Therefore, you devised a series of tests. Dykes let out a low laugh. The calls. Yes, Wolfe said. You contacted Mr. Dykes, suggesting that his note had been buried. You contacted Mr. Haft indirectly, prompting his inference. You telephoned yourself? She flinched. To establish consistency, Wolfe said. And finally, you ensured that the cemetery would act, guaranteeing that the coffin would be opened, even if the others hesitated. Haft spoke, voice tight. You're saying she orchestrated all of it? I'm stating it, Wolfe said. Iris Vale's composure cracked. Not loudly, but enough. You can't prove that. Wolfe inclined his head. Proof is a matter of accumulation. We have opportunity. You were present. We have means. You possessed the memorandum. We have behavior. You initiated or received tailored communications. We have motive. You stood to gain by understanding and exploiting the vulnerabilities of those present. She laughed, a short, brittle sound. Gain? From them? Her eyes flicked just for a second toward Clara Voss. Wolfe saw it. Of course he did. Ah, he said. Clara Voss spoke for the first time since Wolfe had named Iris. Go on, Mr. Wolfe. Wolfe's gaze returned to Iris Vale. Your ultimate objective was not Mr. Dykes, nor Mr. Heft, nor even Mr. Voss. It was Mrs. Voss. The room shifted again. Paul Voss frowned. Clara. Iris Vale's lips pressed together. Wolfe continued. You knew that Mrs. and Voss would seek to control the situation. You knew she would come to me. By setting the others in motion, you ensured that the matter would escalate, drawing her in and forcing her to reveal her own position. Clara Voss's eyes narrowed. And what position is that? That she too has something to protect, Wolfe said. A silence followed that was different from the others. This one was not confusion or tension. It was recognition. I spoke into it. The arrangement you mentioned. The one you went to argue about. Clara Voss did not look at me. Yes. Wolfe nodded. Edwin Voss was in possession of information concerning his sister as well. The memorandum was comprehensive. It did not discriminate. Therefore, Miss Vale, by testing the others, also tested Mrs. Voss. Iris Vale exhaled slowly. I wanted to see who would break first. Dykes let out a low whistle. And? She looked at Clara Voss. No one did. Clara Voss met her gaze, unflinching. You miscalculated. Did I? Iris Vale said quietly. You came here. Clara Voss's voice was cool. To control the outcome. And now? Iris Vale asked. Clara Voss did not answer. Wolfe shifted slightly. We are not yet finished. Miss Vale, you have admitted enough to establish your role. You possess the memorandum. You have used it to provoke and observe. What you have not done is decide. Decide what? She asked. How to use it, Wolfe said. Her silence was answer enough. Wolfe leaned back. You are at a disadvantage. You have revealed your method. You have revealed your possession. You are now vulnerable to collective action by those you sought to manipulate. Dykes straightened. You mean we could? You could, Wolfe said, if you were inclined to cooperation, which you are not. Therefore, you will rely on me. That drew a reaction from all of them. Haft said sharply, Why would we do that? Because, Wolfe said, I offer resolution. Iris Vale's eyes narrowed. What kind of resolution? Wolfe's voice was calm, but there was steel under it now. One that preserves what can be preserved and extinguishes what must be extinguished. You will surrender the memorandum to me. She laughed again, but there was no humor in it. No. Yes, Wolfe said, because if you do not, I will inform the police of your presence at the scene prior to discovery, your removal of property from the deceased, and your subsequent actions. That will complicate your position considerably. She stared at him. And, Wolfe added, because you do not actually wish to destroy them, you wish to understand them. That objective has been achieved. The room held its breath. Slowly, Iris Vale reached into her bag. I watched every movement. When she brought out the small, ugly leather book, I felt the whole case tighten into a single, clean line. The coffin, I thought, had finally opened for the last time. No one moved when the book appeared. It wasn't large, and it wasn't impressive, but it had the effect of a weapon laid on a table where no one had expected to see one. Iris Vale held it for a moment longer than necessary, as if weighing not the object but the consequences attached to it. Then she placed it on the desk. I stepped forward without being told and took it. The leather was worn, the corners softened by handling. It felt ordinary. That, I thought, was the point. Edwin Voss had trusted paper, and paper rarely announces its importance. I handed it to Wolfe. He did not open it immediately. He rested his hand on it, fingers splayed slightly, as if confirming its presence. Then, at last, he flipped it open and began to turn the pages. No one spoke. Even Dykes had the sense to keep quiet. The only sound was the faint, dry whisper of paper. Wolfe read without haste. He did not skim. He did not linger. He moved through it with the same deliberate pace he applied to everything, and I knew that meant he was not merely reading but arranging, selecting, deciding. After a few minutes, he closed it. "It is as described," he said. "That is not helpful," Haft snapped. "It is sufficient," Wolfe replied. "It contains records of obligations, indiscretions, financial irregularities, and personal weaknesses. Each of you is represented, some more extensively than others." Dykes gave a short laugh. I'd have been disappointed otherwise. Paul Voss did not laugh. He stared at the book as if it might open itself and accuse him. Iris Vale leaned back slightly, her hands now empty. "Well," Wolfe looked at her. "You will leave it here." "I already have," she said. "You will also leave any copies or notes you have made," Wolfe continued. "I made none," she said. "That is wise," Wolfe said. Clara Voss spoke, her voice controlled. "What happens now?" Wolfe folded his hands over the book. "Now we determine its disposition." Haft leaned forward. "It is the property of the estate." "Possibly," Wolfe said. "But possession and property are not always aligned in a useful manner." Dykes said, "It belongs to whoever can make the best use of it." "That is precisely what we wish to avoid," Wolfe said. I said, "You mean no one gets to use it?" Wolfe glanced at me. "At last, Mr. Goodwin, a statement of admirable clarity." Paul Voss spoke, his voice tight. "You can't just, 'I can,'" Wolfe said, "and I will." He turned his gaze to each of them in turn. "This memorandum has already caused sufficient disturbance. It has provoked actions that would not otherwise have occurred. It has revealed vulnerabilities that, if exploited, would lead to further disorder. That is undesirable." Dykes snorted. "Undesirable for whom?" "For everyone," Wolfe said. "Including you." Haft's eyes narrowed. "You are proposing to destroy it." "I am proposing to neutralize it," Wolfe said. Iris Vale watched him closely. "And what does that mean?" "It means," Wolfe said, "that the information it contains will not be used as leverage by any of you." Clara Voss's voice was cool. "You are asking us to trust you." "I am not asking," Wolfe said. "I am informing." There was a moment where it could have broken. Dykes shifted, Haft's jaw tightened. Paul Voss looked ready to object, and Iris Vale's expression sharpened. Then Clara Voss spoke. "Very well," she said. All eyes turned to her. Paul Voss frowned. "Clara." She did not look at him. "This has gone far enough. My brother's habits have already caused more damage than I care to see extended." Dykes muttered, "Easy for you to say." She turned her head slightly. "Is it?" He held her gaze, then looked away. Haft exhaled slowly. "If the contents are not used, they will not be," Wolfe said. Iris Vale studied him. "You would destroy something like that?" Wolfe's expression did not change. "I would remove its capacity to harm." She considered that, then nodded once. "All right." Paul Voss looked from one to another, then back to Wolfe. "And we just walk away?" "Yes," Wolfe said. "That's it?" "That is it," Wolfe said. It wasn't, of course. It never is. but it was enough for them. One by one they rose. Haft first, with a stiff nod. Dykes next, with a glance at the book that lingered a fraction too long. Iris Vale stood more slowly, her eyes still on Wolfe, as if committing something to memory. Paul Voss hesitated, then followed his wife without another word. Clara Voss was last. She stood, looked at Wolfe, then at me, then back again. You have a way of simplifying things. I have a way of concluding them, Wolfe said. She inclined her head. Thank you. When they were gone, the house felt different, not quieter, just settled, as if something that had been pressing against the walls had withdrawn. I closed the door and came back to the office. Wolfe was still in his chair, the book on the desk before him. Well, I said. He looked at me. Archie, the safe. I went to it, opened it, and waited. He handed me the book. I put it inside, closed the door, and spun the dial. That's your idea of neutralizing? I asked. For the moment, Wolfe said. Tomorrow it will be otherwise addressed. Burned, I said. He made a small face. Perhaps. Or perhaps selectively redacted. There's no need to destroy what can be rendered harmless. Paper trusted more than blood, I said. Paper is reliable, Wolfe said. It is people who misuse it. Fritz appeared in the doorway. Dinner is served. Wolfe rose. As we went to the dining room, I glanced back once at the office, at the safe that now held the thing everyone had been willing to dig up a grave for. Funny, I said. What is? Wolfe asked. The coffin, I said. All that trouble and it was empty. Wolfe took his seat. Not empty, Archie. Misunderstood. I sat down across from him. That's one way to put it. He picked up his fork. It usually is. I let that sit for a second, then grinned. Next time someone asks me about burial practices, I'm going to tell them to check the paperwork first. Wolfe did not look at me, but I could tell he approved. Dinner proceeded as it always did when Wolfe was satisfied, with attention, precision, and a respect for sequence that bordered on ceremony. Fritz had outdone himself, which was not unusual but was always appreciated by the only man in the room who would say so properly. I did my part, which was to eat well and keep my mouth only moderately occupied. Wolfe did not speak of the case during the meal. That, too, was his habit. Once a matter had been brought to its conclusion, it was set aside until it could be examined without interference from appetite. I let it rest, though not comfortably. The book in the safe had a way of tugging at the back of my mind, like a loose thread that might unravel more than it should if pulled. Coffee arrived. Wolfe accepted it with a nod that carried more gratitude than most men manage with a speech. He sipped once, set the cup down, and looked at me. Archie. Yes, sir. You are dissatisfied. I wouldn't say dissatisfied, I said. Let's call it curious with a slight edge. He inclined his head. State it. All right, I said. We've got the book. We've got the players. We've got a neat little ending where everyone agrees not to use what's inside. That's tidy. Maybe too tidy. He did not react. Continue. Iris Vale takes the book, runs a test on everyone, then hands it over because you ask nicely with a little pressure. Clara Voss accepts your solution without pushing. Haft and Dykes walk away from something they were ready to dig up a grave for. Paul Voss stops arguing. It all fits, but it fits like a suit that was altered in a hurry. Wolfe's eyes narrowed a fraction. You suspect an omission. I suspect something we haven't accounted for, I said. Or someone. He leaned back slightly. An admirable instinct, but imprecise. Refine it. I took a breath. All right. The plan we laid out depends on Iris Vale having the memorandum early enough to make those calls. That puts her at Edwin Voss's place before Clara found the body. You established that. Fine. But there's a gap. Where? Wolfe asked. Between Edwin's death and Iris getting there, I said. You said she found him dead, or as good as dead. That leaves room. Wolfe did not answer immediately. He picked up his coffee again, took a small sip, and set it down with care. "Yes," he said, "there is room. And if there's room," I said, "there's time. And if there's time, there's opportunity for someone else." He nodded once. "Proceed." "Suppose Iris didn't find the book," I said. "Suppose someone else got there first, took it, and then she took it from them, or was given it, or found it later. Well, that would mean the originator of the cause might not be her alone." Wolfe's gaze settled on me. "Better. Continue." "And if that's the case," I said, "then we've still got someone in the shadows who knew about the book, knew about the contents, and moved before anyone else." Wolfe was silent for a moment. Then he said, "You are correct to question the interval." "That's all I needed," I said. "So who else had access?" "Who indeed?" Wolfe murmured. Fritz cleared the table quietly, leaving us with coffee and the weight of what had not yet been fully resolved. I leaned back. "Clara Voss found the body. She says the book wasn't there. We took that at face value." "We took it as a statement," Wolfe corrected. "Not as a conclusion." "Meaning?" I said. "Meaning," Wolfe said, "that it may be incomplete." I felt the thread tighten. "You think she lied," I said. "I think," Wolfe said, "that she may not have told the entire truth." "Why would she hold back?" I asked. "She came to us." "Yes," Wolfe said. "She came to us with a problem, not necessarily with all the information. I considered that. If she had the book at any point, she could have—" "She did not have it," Wolfe said. "You're sure?" "Yes." "How?" I asked. "Because," Wolfe said, "if she had possessed the memorandum, she would not have risked involving others. She would have controlled the situation directly." "That tracks," I admitted. "So she didn't have it. But she might have seen something." Wolfe inclined his head slightly. "Precisely." I sat forward. "Something she didn't tell us." "Yes." "And that something could point to who was there before her." "Yes." I let out a slow breath. So we're not done." "No," Wolfe said. "We are not." I grinned despite myself. Good. I was starting to feel cheated. Wolfe did not smile, but there was a faint easing around his eyes. "You will telephone Mrs. Voss." "Now?" I asked. "Now," he said. "Request that she return. Inform her that there is a detail which requires clarification." I got up, went to the phone, and dialed. It took a minute. When she answered, her voice was composed as ever. "Mrs. Voss, this is Archie Goodwin. Mr. Wolfe would like to see you again. Yes, tonight. No, it won't take long. Yes, it's important." I hung up and turned back. "She'll be here in 20 minutes, I said. Wolfe nodded. "Good." I went back to my chair. "You think she'll tell us?" "She will," Wolfe said. "Why?" I asked. "Because," he said, "she now believes the matter concluded. So that is when people are most inclined to be candid." I laughed softly. "You've got a charming view of human nature." "I have an accurate one," he said. We waited. The house was quiet again, but it wasn't the same quiet as before. This one had expectation in it, like the pause before the last move in a game where both players already know the outcome but must see it played through. When the bell rang, I went to answer it with a sense that we were about to reopen something we had just carefully closed. Clara Voss stood there, her expression unchanged, but her eyes more alert. "I thought we were finished," she said. "So did I told her. "Turns out we're thorough instead." She stepped inside. When we returned to the office, Wolfe did not waste time. "Mrs. Voss," he said, "when you discovered your brother's body, what precisely did you observe?" She looked at him steadily. "I told you." "You told me," Wolfe said, "what you considered relevant. I now require what you omitted." There was a pause. Then, slowly, Clara Voss said, "There was a chair." I felt it. Wolfe did not move. "Yes?" "It had been moved," she said. "Not far, just not where it belonged." "And?" Wolfe prompted. She hesitated. "And," she said, "the window was slightly open." The thread pulled tight. I glanced at Wolfe. He closed his eyes. And I knew just like that the coffin hadn't refused to stay closed at all. It had been opened from the inside. Wolfe did not open his eyes at once. When he did, it was without haste, as if the detail had not surprised him but had merely completed something already in progress. "A chair," he said, "and a window." Clara Voss nodded. "Yes." "Why did you not mention this earlier?" Wolfe asked. She held his gaze. "Because it did not seem important." "It is always the things that do not seem important," Wolfe murmured, "that are decisive." I leaned forward. "Chair moved, window open. Someone left that way." "Or entered," Wolfe said. Clara Voss shook her head. "No, Edwin would not have admitted anyone through the window." "No," Wolfe agreed. "He would not. Therefore, the person was already inside." The room settled around that. I said, "So whoever took the book didn't come in after. They were there before." "Yes," Wolfe said. "Present at the time of death." Clara Voss's voice was quieter now. I thought, perhaps Edwin had tried to reach the window. "No," Wolfe said. "A man in seizure does not rearrange furniture with purpose." The chair was moved by another. I felt the last of the loose pieces begin to align. "Someone he knew," I said. "Someone he let in." "Yes," Wolfe said. "Someone with access. Someone with reason to be there before Miss Vale's arrival." Iris Vale had gone very still again, but this time it wasn't tension. It was something like resignation. Wolfe turned his head toward her. "Miss Vale, when you visited Edwin Voss that afternoon, the chair was already moved." She hesitated. "Yes," she said. "And the window?" "Open," she said. "You assumed nothing of it," Wolfe said. "I was preoccupied," she replied. "Indeed," Wolfe said. I looked from one to the other. "Which means she didn't move it." "No," Wolfe said. "She found the scene as it had been left." "Then someone else was there before her," I said. "Yes." Dykes leaned forward. "So who gets in before the sister, before the ex-fiancé, and walks out a window?" Haft's voice was tight. "Someone with a key." Paul Voss shifted. "Or someone expected." Wolfe inclined his head. "Precisely." Clara Voss spoke slowly. "Edwin did not entertain casually. If someone was there, it was arranged." "Or regular," I said. Wolfe's eyes moved, not to any of the obvious candidates, but to Clara Voss herself. "Mrs. Voss," he said, "who had regular access to your brother's study?" She frowned slightly. "His clerk, occasionally. Mr. Haft, in a business capacity. No one else." Haft shook his head sharply. "I was not there that day." "I did not say you were," Wolfe said. I felt it again. That sense of something just out of sight, about to step forward. "Clerk," I said. "We haven't talked about the clerk." Wolfe nodded. "Sir, an omission." Clara Voss blinked, just once. "The clerk? That's absurd." "Is it?" Wolfe asked. "He is insignificant," she said. "A copyist. He has no—" "Significance is not a prerequisite for opportunity," Wolfe said. Saul, who had been silent, spoke. "Clerk's name is Daniel Krell. I checked him. Quiet, punctual, no record." Wolfe turned his head slightly. "Where was he Tuesday afternoon?" Saul shrugged. "Left the office at 4, as usual. No solid on where he went after." "That," Wolfe said, "is unfortunate." I leaned back. "So Krell leaves at 4, shows up at Edwin's place, gets let in because he's known. Something happens. Maybe Edwin collapses, and Krell takes the book and leaves through the window." "Why the window?" Dykes asked. To avoid being seen leaving, I said, if someone was expected later. Wolfe nodded faintly. Miss Vale. Iris Vale closed her eyes briefly. The door was locked when I arrived. I had a key. That simplifies matters, Wolfe said. Mr. Krell could not leave by the door without locking it behind him. He chose the window. Haft frowned. This is conjecture. No, Wolfe said. It is reconstruction. Paul Voss spoke, his voice strained. And what does Krell do with the book? Wolfe looked at him. He reads it. Silence. And then? Paul Voss asked. And then, Wolfe said, he discovers that it contains the means to influence every principle in his employer's life. He also discovers that he lacks the experience to apply that influence directly. Therefore, he experiments. The calls? I said. Yes, Wolfe said. Anonymous, tailored, cautious. He observes the reactions. He learns. Dykes let out a low laugh. The quiet clerk turns puppeteer? Temporarily, Wolfe said. Iris Vale spoke, her voice subdued now. And then I took it from him. Wolfe inclined his head. Yes, that remains. All eyes turned to her. She opened them and looked at Wolfe. I went back the next day. I couldn't leave it. I searched again. It wasn't where I had seen Edwin keep it before. But Krell, he was there. Saul's head turned. At the office? No, she said. At Edwin's. He said he had come to collect papers. He was nervous. Too nervous. And you suspected, Wolfe said. Yes, she said. I confronted him. He denied it. Then I saw his bag. What did you do? I asked. I took it, she said simply. The book was inside. Dykes whistled softly. Efficient, Haft said. And you said nothing. I wanted to understand it first, she said. Before deciding. Wolfe nodded. Which brings us to the present. Clara Voss sat very still. This clerk, Krell, he started all of this. He initiated the disturbances, Wolfe said. Yes. Paul Voss frowned. Where is he now? Wolfe reached for the telephone. Archie, he said. Inspector Kramer. I dialed. It took a moment. Kramer, I said when he came on. Wolfe's got something you'll want. Name's Daniel Krell. Clerk. You'll find him either at his lodgings or attempting to leave them. Yes, I'll hold. I covered the receiver. They're sending someone. Wolfe nodded. I went back on. Right, we'll be here. I hung up. The room was quiet again, but this time it wasn't waiting. It was closing. Dykes stretched slightly. So that's it. Clerk gets clever, gets outplayed. Wolfe shook his head. Not outplayed, interrupted. Haft exhaled slowly. Sis and the rest of us. Return to your lives, Wolfe said. Preferably with greater discretion. Iris Vale looked at the desk where the book had been. And that? Resolved, Wolfe said. Clara Voss rose. Then we are finished. Wolfe inclined his head. We are. They left one by one, quieter than before. Not defeated, just adjusted. When the door closed behind the last of them, I turned to Wolfe. Not bad, I said. From coffin to clerk. Wolfe closed his eyes. From disorder to order, Archie. The coffin was merely a symptom. I grinned. Still, it had style. He did not respond. After a moment, I said, You ever notice? People spend all that time worrying about what's buried, and it's the things walking around that cause the trouble. Wolfe opened one eye. That is because, Mr. Goodwin, and the living are far less reliable than the dead. I nodded. Yeah. I glanced toward the safe, then back at him, and a lot harder to keep closed. The inspector arrived sooner than I expected, which meant either Kramer had been in a cooperative mood or the name had carried enough weight to hurry him along. It turned out to be both. Kramer came in with Sergeant Pearlie Stebbins behind him, took one look at Wolfe, one at me, and then swept the room with the kind of glance that counts heads and measures trouble. "All right," he said. "What have you got?" Wolfe did not rise. A name and a sequence. Daniel Krell, clerk to the late Edwin Voss. He was present at Mr. Voss's residence prior to the discovery of the body, removed a memorandum book of considerable interest, and initiated a series of anonymous communications designed to provoke reactions from certain parties. Kramer grunted. "We'll get to the speeches later. Where is he?" "Likely at his lodgings," Wolfe said, "or en route to somewhere he imagines safer. Mr. Panzer can provide the address." "Saul did." Kramer nodded once to Pearlie. "Go." Pearlie left without comment. Kramer turned back. "And the book?" "In my safe," Wolfe said. Kramer's eyes narrowed. "You want to hand it over?" "No," Wolfe said. That hung there for a second. "No," Kramer repeated. "No," Wolfe said again. "The memorandum contains material that is not directly relevant to any criminal charge, but would, if disseminated, cause considerable harm. Mr. Krell's actions, unlawful entry, removal of property, and attempted extortion can be established without it." Kramer studied him. "So you're asking me to take your word on what's in that book?" "I'm informing you that its contents are extraneous to your case," Wolfe said. "You may, of course, insist, in which case I will comply. But I advise against it." Kramer looked at me. "You agree with him?" I shrugged. "Depends on how much paperwork you like." He snorted, then looked back at Wolfe. "All right, for now. But if this turns messy—" "It will not," Wolfe said. Kramer gave him a long look, then nodded once. "Fine. We'll pick up Krell and see what he says." He turned and went out, leaving the door open just long enough to let the outside world remind us it existed. When it closed again, the house settled. I went back to the office and leaned against my desk. "You're letting him walk around without the book. That's confidence." "It is efficiency," Wolfe said. Same thing, if you're right," I said. He ignored that. "Mr. Krell will confirm the sequence. He will not have anticipated Miss Vale's intervention. His plan was incomplete. That will make him cooperative." "Or desperate," I said. "Desperation is often cooperative," Wolfe said. I grinned. "You should put that on a card." He closed his eyes. An hour passed. Fritz cleared away the last of dinner's remains. Saul departed without ceremony, and I sorted the morning mail I'd abandoned like it might have learned something in my absence. It hadn't. At a little past 10, the telephone rang. I picked it up. "Goodwin." "Kramer," came the voice. "We've got him." "That was quick," I said. "He wasn't going anywhere," Kramer said. "Nervous, though. Started talking before we finished asking." "Confession?" I asked. "Enough," Kramer said. He was at Voss's place. Says he went to drop off some papers. Found the old man in bad shape. Panicked. Took the book when he saw it. Figured he could use it. Made the calls to see who'd bite." "And Miss Vale?" I asked. "Showed up the next day. Cornered him. Took it off him," Kramer said. "He didn't report it. Didn't want questions." "That tracks," I said. Kramer grunted. "Yeah, we'll sort the rest out. Your man was right." "I'll let him know," I said. "Don't," Kramer said. "He'll get insufferable." "Too late," I said and hung up. I turned to Wolfe. "They've got him, just like you said." Wolfe opened one eye. "Of course." "Krell confessed," I said. "Took the book, made the calls, got outmaneuvered by Iris Vale." Wolfe closed his eye again. "Yes." "That's it," I said. "Neat, clean, almost respectable." Wolfe said nothing, and I pushed off the desk and went to the safe. "What about this?" I asked, tapping it lightly. Wolfe opened his eyes again. "Open it." I did. The book sat there, exactly where I had left it, looking as harmless as ever. "Bring it," Wolfe said. I handed it to him. He opened it again, not to read this time, but to confirm something. Then he closed it, reached for a match from the tray on his desk, and struck it. I watched. He held the flame to the corner of the first page. It caught slowly, then more eagerly, the paper curling as the fire took hold. "You're not going to—" I started. "Yes," he said. He held it until the flame had established itself, then dropped the book into the metal tray. The fire spread, consuming page after page, the careful records of Edwin Voss turning to ash with a quiet, steady determination. And I stood there and watched it burn. "Paper trusted more than blood," I said. "Paper records," Wolfe said. "It does not judge. That is left to those who read it." "And you've decided no one should," I said. "I have decided," Wolfe said, "that its continued existence serves no constructive purpose." The last of the pages blackened, then collapsed into themselves. I exhaled slowly. That's one way to close a coffin. Wolfe glanced at me. The coffin was never the problem. "Yeah," I said. "It was what people thought was inside it." "Precisely," Wolfe said. I nudged the tray slightly with a pencil, watching the ash settle. "You know, for something that refused to stay closed, it ended up disappearing pretty completely." Wolfe leaned back in his chair. "Most disturbances do, once properly addressed." I nodded. "And the people?" "They will adjust," Wolfe said. "Or they will not. That is no longer our concern." I grinned. "I like it when you say that. It means we're done." He closed his eyes. "We are done." I looked at the empty tray, then at him. "Funny thing," I said. "What?" Wolfe murmured. "All that digging around," I said. "And in the end, the only thing worth keeping was the silence." Wolfe did not answer immediately. Then, quietly, "Silence, Mr. Goodwin, is often the most reliable conclusion." I considered that, then nodded. "Yeah," I said, "and a lot easier to live with."